Okay, so my project is on investment versus agency. So I'm trying to increase investment of non-major students by giving them choice. So the class context, just so you know, is I was the instructor of record for a class this past quarter called BioSci 164, Genetics and Evolution. This is a non-major freshman level introduction to molecular biology, genetics, and evolution. I had 19 students. All the classes were held virtually because COVID problems. It was synchronous though, so we did have discussions. The point of this class was to give students enough of a background in science so that they can have informed scientific discussions on topical subjects, which we did touch on in class. A few of the more topical subjects that we talked about was the biology behind skin color, using different techniques to change DNA and possibly create designer babies. We talked about COVID-19 and the vaccine for COVID-19 and how that was made. So things like that. So when I was first designing this entire class, my big question was, how do I get these students excited for and invested in science? These are non-majors. They did not come here to learn science, and yet they have to take this class as one of their distribution credits. So how do I get them invested in this at all? So my big research question ended up being, do non-major students get more invested in an assignment if they can choose a topic that interests them? So I don't want to go too much into the background reading that I did for this, but I did want to make a couple quick points, which is that there's actually quite a bit of literature out there on how to teach non-majors in STEM, but a lot of that is telling you basically to teach this very connect to the students' lives, so teach the process of science rather than science itself. There's great articles out there that outline important steps of creating like critical thinkers in science, but they're not measuring investment. I wanted my students to become invested in this. There was some really great stuff that measures student investment and student attitude, and I did gain a lot from those readings, but those were done mostly on students that were already majors and already had some level of investment in science, which my students did not. So here's a method that I decided to go with, and we'll talk at the end about tweaks that could have been made, but I'm going to tell you what actually happened. So we had 2 debate sessions, and each of these debate sessions had 2 debates in them. And of course, each debate had 2 different sides, the pro and the con side. So there was 4 different groups. And so in the first debate, this was my control debate session, and the students were assigned a topic. So the 2 topics that they used was using CRISPR to alter future generations. This is a good thing or a bad thing. And the other topic was, should private companies be allowed to mandate genetic screening for their employees? The students were assigned a topic and then assigned also a point of view to defend. They were given a week to prepare once they were assigned their topic and point of view. The rules were they must read at least 1 provided article and prep that knowledge for debate. So they were allowed to read as many articles as they wanted. They were allowed to prep as many articles as they wanted. What they turned in at the end of this debate, they were not graded on the debate itself, they were graded on their preparation for the debate. So this prep worksheet was the important part. And directly before the debate, they were given survey number 1. So the experiment was really debate number 2. And in this debate session, the students were choosing a topic. So I couldn't let them choose just anything out of the blue because we had to narrow it down to 2 topics. So I gave them 8 different choices, and they each ranked their 8 choices. And the top 2 of those choices were chosen, and they were assigned whatever topic that they ranked the highest. So the 2 topics that were chosen for the second debate session was, should we allow for cloning of human body parts, and does DNA profiling cause more harm than good? The students were then assigned a point of view to defend, so they were still assigned something in this debate. They were again given a week to prepare. They had to read at least 1 provided article again and prep that knowledge on their worksheet that they turned in. But again, they were allowed to read as many articles as they want and to prep as many articles as they want. And directly before that debate, they were given survey 2. And survey 1 and survey 2 are identical, except for 1 question difference that we'll talk about in a second. So here were the basic survey question ideas, at least. This isn't word for word what I gave them, but here were the ideas. So the first thing I was interested in is to get concrete investment questions out there. So I wanted to know, how many articles did you read, but not necessarily cite on your PEP worksheet? So this is, you could have skimmed articles, you could have read what you think the other side is going to be reading and preparing, and so you want to know what they are going to read first, or you read an article and you realize it's not really what you want to prepare, but you read it anyway. So those types of articles. Number 2 was, how many articles did you actually cite on your PEP worksheet and did you prepare? And 3 is, how much time overall did you spend preparing for this debate? So how much time did you spend individually reading? How much time did you meet with your group beforehand to get some cohesive arguments going? What was your time span for this? And then I also wanted to know about their feeling investment questions. So I asked, how invested do you feel in your topic? That in the first debate you were assigned, in the second debate you chose. Did you agree with the point of view that you were assigned? And then how invested do you feel in that point of view? And then in the second survey, they were also given the additional question of, which debate did you prefer? There were a couple other questions that I had on the survey that didn't end up giving anything interesting, so we're not going to talk about those. But these were the ones that ended up giving anything that I thought was worth talking about. Some notes about the questions and answers the students were given. They were asked to create a code so that all of these could be anonymous. I didn't want them to think this was affecting their grade at all, but I did want to be able to correlate their survey 1 to survey 2, so they did create a code for this. In their concrete questions, they were allowed to write in whatever values they wanted to. They weren't limited to what kind of value they could put in. All the feeling questions were on a Likert scale. Comments on all of these were always encouraged, but they were never required. And I'll be sharing some of the more interesting comments in this. So some of the things that we learned from this. So the first thing is the number of articles read, but not necessarily cited. So I have over here the total average. So the purple being the first debate, blue being the second debate, and then each student individually. So you can see some students greatly went up. So student 1, for example, only really read the 1 article for the first debate, but in the second debate read 3 articles to prepare. Or student 9 read 4 the first time and 6 the second time. However, a number of students, such as student 5, read 3 articles both times, and even some the opposite direction. So student 6 read 2 articles first time, but only 1 article the second time. So this average does go up a little bit from the first debate to the second debate. It's not actually significant. So the p-value was 0.06. So not a significant increase, but still an increase from the first debate to the second debate. So then if I look at the number of articles that were read and cited, so these articles were prepared, we see an even smaller increase. So there is a tiny bit of an increase still, but this decreases. It's a smaller increase than before. So you still have things like student 1 who only cited 1 and then cited 2 the second time. But of course you have the students like student 7 who cited the same number of articles both times, and you have students that decrease, such as student 6. So cited 2 the first time and only cited 1 the second time. So this again was an increase, but not at all significant. And then if you ask about the total time spent preparing, this was a tiny bit of an increase, but not at all significant again. So you have some people like student 14, for example, who only spent 1 hour the first time and 2.5 hours the second time preparing total. Or student 5 had the biggest jump of where really only half an hour the first time and 2 hours the second time. But again, you also have the people that stayed the same, such as student 11, and people that decreased, such as student 7. So 2 hours the first time and 1.5 hours the second time. So again, technically an increase, not at all significant. So if we ask about feeling investment questions, so this is the overall investment feelings on their topics. This is the Likert scale, where their 1 is not being invested and 10 is extremely invested. All the squares are what they said for debate 1 and circles for debate 2. Overall, not really a huge difference in the overall trends of this. If you look at some of the comments, we can see, so this student, for example, on debate 1, who rated this an overall 4 investment, said, I'm not that invested in my topic because I've never even thought about it before. This person who rated a 7 on debate 2 says, I think I spent a significant amount of time researching this topic and brainstorming claims to defend it. So I think I feel fairly invested in our topic. So those types of things are good to know. Again, not a big difference, not at all significant of a change. Oh, and this person who ranked an 8 on debate 1 said, I feel very strongly about this, and I realize in practice some of the topic this person was discussing is good and hard to abuse. So they did feel strongly about that topic. If we look at, then I wanted to know their investment on their point of view, and I split this up into students who either agreed or did not agree with their assigned point of view. So this is just showing you students who did agree with their point of view. So you can see there actually is a bit of a difference in this one. So debate 1, the majority of the inputs were quite low, and in debate 2, they're getting a little higher. Technically speaking, if you look at the p-value, this is not significant again, but it is getting quite close. We're at 0.058, so it's almost significant, but not quite. So some things that they said, the student for debate 1 that ranked this a 5 said, I think that I would support this point of view regardless, but I love arguing, so more or less I'm indifferent on this. The student who ranked this an 8 on debate 2 said, I see the benefits of the opposing position, but the risks and concerns outweigh the potential benefits for me, and I'm firm on my point of view. And then if you look at just the students, their overall investment feelings on their point of view, but they did not agree with what they were assigned, you'll see these scores are quite low, as would be expected for if you didn't assign, you're not going to be invested if you didn't even agree with the point of view that you were given. And this outlier over here is very interesting. We'll talk about in a second. But this person who ranked debate 1 as a 2 said, in accordance with most of the articles I read, I believe the point of view I was assigned is particularly harmful. There's arguments against it. Made this point very difficult, this debate very difficult to prepare for, which makes sense. And then this outlier up here says, I was assigned the point of view that we should never be allowed to use CRISPR to alter future generations. They said, I think this is true for now, but I also think that never could change. So they don't agree with their point of view, but they do feel very invested in this point of view, evidently. So then I asked them, what was your overall preference? Forget investment, what was your preference? Did you like debate 1? Did you like debate 2 more? Did you have a preference either way? And the majority of students actually did prefer debate 1 over debate 2, and some of them just didn't have a preference for either one. And when you ask them why, first debate was better. Here were some of the comments that it was more interesting. It was more, the topics were more controversial. They had better topics. They say I had more personal experience with the topics and better articles were easier to find. And then when the second debate was better, some of the comments were the second debate was more interesting, or the second debate was more applicable to my field of study as a legal studies major. So some of the ultimate findings that I got out of this, let's move this here. Some of the ultimate findings, so the concrete investment items, they show the students do have a slight more investment towards the second debate, but it wasn't significant. The feeling investment show there's, again, a slight lean towards the second debate, not significant, but mostly among students that agree with their assigned points of view. When their preferences are asked, though, they do choose the first debate as their preference. So what I think some of the issues with this were, that I talked about in the beginning, issues with the setup, which I kind of realized at the end. So the topics for the first debate that I gave them are very classic bioethics debate topics, and they're typically just more interesting to people. So it's kind of hard to follow that up with more topics later on. It was also very difficult to narrow down the second topic of debates. So when I had them rank the 8 different options that I gave them, the preferences were all over the place. There was 2 winners in the end, but it was by a narrow margin. So a lot of the students were given topics that they actually did not rank very high. Again, I had a limited number of students, so of course it's going to be harder to see any kind of significance without many students to get some feedback from. It definitely would have been better if they could have chosen their point of view, and if they could have chosen any topic at all that interests them, but that doesn't work with the setup of a debate and the fact that it does have to be structured and it does need to be 4 equal groups for a debate to work. So ideas for next time, how I think I could make this a little bit better, is I do think this is a good idea and a good question, but I think it should be more on an assignment that doesn't rely on groups. So if I can make this either a paper or a solo presentation, something where there's not a group and they can have one topic that's assigned the first time and then choose freely on their own the second time, I think that's would make it easier. I think they would have a better agency in that. I felt bad about the fact that some of the students, even in the chosen second debate, still had topics that they did not rank very high when they were ranking their preferred debate. So it didn't work well with my class this time. I'd already made it before I had seen how I could do this type of topic, research topic. But perhaps next time, I think that would be some good future directions to get some good answers to this question. So thanks to everyone in the Cyril Center. You guys have been wonderful. And of course, thanks to the biology department at Northwestern who gave me this class to teach. So that was very, very helpful to have a group of guinea pigs to work with.